Hey, good morning, Catalina Foothills Church and friends. Pastor John Stone here. It's Thanksgiving week, so happy Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoy whatever you do this week, whether it's gathering with family, which is traditional, or you're with us at the church for Friendsgiving. That's going to be exciting. I got my turkeys thawing outside, or whether you're doing something else unique, like going and serving meals to those in need. Happy Thanksgiving, and it's good to be with you. So we're going to do during Advent the 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas and then Christmas Eve, a series on the mothers of Jesus. And in the genealogy of Matthew, when he introduces the coming King, King Jesus, he does something very unusual for the announcement of a coming King, because genealogies are very important to kings, and they're more important in the Bible and for God's people, for the Jewish nation, because God had promised that one would come from Abraham and one would come from David and would sit on David's throne, and he would rule the peoples with justice and equity. That the government would be upon his shoulders. We know these promises around the Christmas time. But what's unusual is that he includes 4 women in that genealogy. Almost never in that time of Christ were women involved in genealogies, or was their participation in that even important? But here, Matthew goes out of his way to include 5 women: Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary. And we're going to look at Tamar this Sunday, and just a heads up, there's going to be prostitution, adultery, lying. And the reason I want to look at these is because the scriptures are doing something unique. In the time of the scriptures writing, women did not have the rights they have today. And that's not a comment that says they have enough rights yet, or that we have the equality we long for in America. But women were below second-half citizens. They could not testify in courts of law. They had no personal rights. They were dependent upon their father or their husband or their brothers for their income and for their food. And much truer in the Older Testament, we do see these shining lights like Deborah, who leads God's people in the book of Kings. But Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary are presented to us as women that Jesus is proud to call his mothers, to say, hey, I'm a descendant of Tamar, a deceiver, an adulteress. I'm a descendant of Rahab, who sold out her country, but for the sake of God's people, she did it. I'm a descendant of Ruth, who became one of the king's harem. She was one of hundreds of women married to that king who saved God's people, who risked her life. I'm a descendant of Bathsheba, an adulteress, who brought down King David in some ways, whose child died, who David murdered her husband to cover up his adultery with her. And I'm a descendant of Mary, a single mom, pledged to be married to a man and yet pregnant. He decided to put her away. We know this story. But an angel said, no, what's conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. Why is Jesus proud? Why does Matthew go out of his way to include something in the genealogy of a king that no other king would include? I think there's at least 2 reasons, and we'll see these as the weeks go through. And I want you to think about them. Number 1, these people are incredibly messy. Tamar's husband died. It was her father-in-law's duty, according even to the Old Testament law, to provide her another son or another husband, or to take her into his house. He does neither. He lies to her about giving her a son, and then he does not. She ultimately deceives him, pretends to be a prostitute, and Jacob sleeps with her. She conceives a child. Bathsheba, an adulteress called by the king to the palace. We might say we would rather her give up her life and run from King David than commit adultery, but she committed adultery. Mary's reputation was ruined by any standard in the community that she grew up in because she had a child out of wedlock. Number 1, the gospel is for people who can clearly see they're sinful. And much of our life is hiding our sinfulness or being good And I'm not even challenging that language, doing our duty, going to school, getting a career, taking care of our families, and hiding ourselves from the fact that it is salvation from sin that everyone needs. And in some ways, these folks had advantages because their sin was obvious. And we're going to see messiness every week, a messiness that makes us uncomfortable. Secondly, these women are heroes. We're even going to see that Tamar was the one who obeyed the scriptures, who did what God asked. We may not understand why he asked it. We certainly don't understand the cultural ramifications of those days. It's very difficult to preach these things and to talk about them. And yet God included them in his word because he wants us to see that these women, Ruth, who delivered her people, Bathsheba, whom Jesus Christ came from, Mary, who was shamed and scorned and didn't even understand the ministry, that they are in fact heroes, which is seldom said in a book that can feel very patriarchal at times. So looking forward, a little bit of longer devotion here on Thanksgiving Tuesday. We're going to see messy people. We're going to see women heroes, and it's going to be amazing. So happy Thanksgiving. Have a great week, and we will see you soon.